Today on the list, what are we doing? We are doing number 59 to 55. Maybe that's why I haven't done the video. Zuleika Dobson. Come on now, let's say that correctly. That's definite. Laika. Laika? That's the name of the little dog that the Russians sent into space. Sweet little Laika. Zuleika Dobson by Max Beerbohm. It's an old one. I think it's from 1910. It is very much like reading about another world which hardly exists at all anymore. It's really rather a strange book. Well, let me just tell you what I remember of it. Zuleika Dobson is a woman of legendary beauty. That is the only thing anyone ever talks about this woman is her phantasmagorical beauty. It was like when Megan Fox became famous. Every time you were going on the internet to check a recipe for chicken wings, there would be 100 pictures of Megan Fox. So like that, but 100 years earlier. And she travels around doing a little magical act. How she claims to make a living. However, she lives in the lap of luxury because of all of the gifts her dozens of admirers are constantly giving her. Every man she meets instantly falls in love with her because of her otherworldly beauty. Like it is incomprehensible how gorgeous this woman is. Men fall dead in love instantaneously, and they give her trinkets and baubles and jewelry and gems and whatever they can afford just to get a smile from her, because they know they have no chance of really consummating anything because she's just too much for anyone to really conceive of. So that is how she lives. She gets gifts from all of these befuddled men and travels around doing a magic act, which for me, that was the funniest part of the book, was that her magic act isn't very good. Like if you can imagine a child with their first magic set doing a little performance for the guests, the family relatives. Here are the 3 cups and here's the walnut. Where is it? Oh, it's not here anymore. Can you imagine? Where is the little red ball? Oh, wherever has it gone? Like that kind of very simplistic magic. That is what she does. And everyone is in raptures not because of the performance, that is for sure. And the thing about Zuleika is that she doesn't fall in love with any of the men because they love her so much. And she's not interested because it is so clear and obvious that they love her. So she is just turned off by that. She doesn't need to return the favor. However, when she goes to Oxford, there is this one duke who is so stiff and he is so, British, do not display any emotions whatsoever, that at first he is just frozen by her beauty, but fortunately he is frozen in this attitude of stiffness. And she sees the Duke, and this is the first time ever in her life that a man simply hasn't turned to jelly in her presence. And because of his cold reserve, she falls in love with him. It's a bit silly, I know. And then the rest of the book is him. It gets kind of weird because she loves him because he seems not to love her, but he secretly does love her. And then for some reason he decides to kill himself out of love, which leads to, spoiler, but I don't think anyone's going to read this book, but okay, stop listening now for the next 20 seconds. Because the Duke decides to kill himself for his love for Zuleika Dobson, nearly all of the students at Oxford University in England follow his example, and they all kill themselves. I think they all go jumping into a river or something. All of them, like the whole student body. Was it only boys at the time? I guess it was an all-boys school. 100% of the kids at the school kill themselves because the Duke's doing it because he's in love with her, and they're all in love with her. And I think what happens in the end is that she sort of says, oh yeah, something silly like, oh, that happens everywhere I go. And then she goes off to the next town. Yeah. Is it good? I read it because it was on this list. Did I enjoy reading it? Well, I found it stuffy in the way that I find quite a lot of writing from the earliest part of the 20th century to be quite stuffy, but that was how they wrote them then. And that's not the only one on the list today that's like that. All right, jumping over to the next continent, to America, The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. Edith Wharton was writing about the American Gilded Age, which was the end of the 19th century. She was writing about the late 1800s in America, where certain families had indescribable wealth. See, I am not a fan of Edith Wharton's books because they're all so proper. The upper class are all very snobbish. I mean, it seems the only thing they do for fun is they play cards for money, and that's always the difficulty. Oh, someone's been playing cards for too high stakes. And in this book, the main character is a guy. He's very, very wealthy, and he's made a good match. He's going to get married to this woman, and it's all been kind of set up and formalized by both families, and everybody agrees it's going to make a good match. And on his part anyway, there's not a lot of love in it. It's mainly for making a good match between the families. A good financial match it's all based on money. And then this woman who he seems to have had an acquaintance with from an earlier time, she arrives back from Europe. Already she's a bit tainted from that European, oh, we don't like that too much in America. That's not a big fan of foreigners. Like in the upper echelons of society, no foreigners allowed. So she arrives back. She's American, but she's been married to, I think, some Polish duke or lord, and he was an alcoholic, and maybe he beat her. So she's arrived back. So she's already tainted with European husband, and she plans to get a divorce. So really, her name is blackened in society. And this man who is planning to make this match has romantic feelings for her. And the entire book is, will he or won't he? Will he get married? Will he abandon that safety, financial, good match for this other woman? Because then, if he takes up with her, then he will still be rich, but in terms of reputation and credibility, his name will be ruined, especially for abandoning that woman who is sought after by, all the other millionaires. So that's it. Why don't I like Edith Wharton? It's just so clean and proper. Certainly, society wasn't like that, even for the richest and the those people who were the top of society. I don't think they behaved so properly. Where in a gentleman's life, his greatest dilemma was trying to decide on what sort of an occupation he might like to take up, because selling was forbidden, because selling was ugly, or kind of a trashy thing to be doing with your life, to sell goods. Like it was low class to be associated with sales. That a gentleman would go into law or medicine or the government. Those were the areas that a gentleman might go into. Of course, a lot of time could be spent hunting, a lot of time could be spent gambling, a lot of time could be spent at the club, reading the newspapers. Eventually, at some point, he had to, even though he had money to live for the rest of his life, it was considered what you ought to do. It seems to be symptomatic of the Gilded Age is that everybody does what they ought to do. And to not go along with the dictates of society is to risk your name and, being ostracized. I wish that it was a bit more, like I like Balzac and I like Zola, and that feels like I'm getting a much more realistic depiction of society at the time, even earlier actually, because Edith Wharton was writing about a later time historically, chronologically, than Balzac or Zola. Just not my kind of thing. It's a little bit too, pinkies out for my taste. Oh boy. 57, Parade's End by Madox Ford. If you decide that you would like to read the 100 greatest English written novels of the 20th century as chosen by the Modern Library, you might think to yourself, well, 100 books. I read 20 a year. I could do the whole list in 5 years. It's actually not 100 books. It's 100 titles. Like as for the Alexandria Quartet, that's 4 novels. And Parade's End is also 4 novels. I think I calculated it's something more like 140 books. Now, for Parade's End, I have to make a lot of assumptions about the British character. I can only go by what I've read movies, television. In this book, the main character is a man who is trying to display the ultimate version of British reservedness, proper emotional behavior, which is to say, no emotions displayed ever at any time, that everything should be done with a rock-solid face, and you should never become flustered, you should never become upset, you should never display, you should view everything, sorry, it's such a cliche, a very stiff upper lip. No matter what comes your way, everything has to be taken in and dealt with coldly. I believe, my opinion, I believe that there was that once upon a time in the British character, this very cool reservedness that not to display any outward signs of emotion or affection. If you were to display anything, it should be only your scintillating wit and nothing more than that. It should be caustic, it should be dry, it should be biting, it should be humorous, but perhaps even dour witticism, which you would throw out to let people know that you were really clever and paying attention. So we have this man, and not only, there's one other thing about him, is that the other aspect, which was a bit stranger for me, is that he wants to know everything. And I mean everything. Like, he wants to know when is the best season to go rabbit hunting, and how is the best way to catch trout in your stream in October. Like, he wants to know everything. There's a line in the book which I remember, it really stuck in my mind, that he looked down on people who read the encyclopedia because he felt that a gentleman should really know everything. If you're anybody, then you should just know everything. What are you, a dummy? You don't know everything? You don't know when the next eclipse is going to be, and you don't know all of the names for the phases of the moon, and you don't know how to identify the constellations in the sky? Where did you go to school, you dimwit? God, what are you? Did you grow up on the farm? Like, that's his personality. Knows everything. Like, ask him any question and he's just got the answer for you. And, zero emotion. So that's the beginning of the book. We meet his wife. His wife is intent on destroying him because somehow she wants him to display emotion. She wants him to show her some anger or some frustration or some jealousy. That's what she wants from him, this outburst of passion, and he steadfastly refuses to give it to her, which redoubles her efforts to try to upset him. And like, she really does. Like, that, the wife character in this book really upset me quite a lot, because all she does, she devotes all of her time and energy into provoking him, and he just gazes upon her with the appearance of frightful indifference. So that makes it kind of a hard book to read. One other problem, two other problems, but one other problem is that a very close friend of his has borrowed a substantial amount of money from him in keeping with his British temperament of never showing any emotion. He feels that it is beneath him to ask for the money back, because that's not the behavior of a gentleman. A gentleman keeps his mouth closed and waits for the money to come back. His friend seems not to remember that he's borrowed this massive amount of money. There is this large amount of money being owed to this man, which he feels it is improper to ask for in return. And when he sees this man who owes him money, that man pretends that he's unaware, or he's forgotten about this huge sum. So that's also quite a difficult thing to get your head around. How is he going to get the money back if he feels that it is improper to ask for it? Like, this book is really crazy making. This book will drive you to, maybe that's the point of the book. You just want him to break down and, say, all right, you get out of my house, we're divorced, and you give me the money back or I'm going to smack you silly. To let go. And then he goes off to fight in the First World War. And it's pretty horrific, like what he has to endure. A gentleman, know-it-all, and not in a bad sense that way. I mean, like a know-it-all in a positive way, if there is such a thing. And he goes off to endure the horrors of the First World War and what will become of him and his marriage. and it's four. Probably the four books individually are not long in themselves, but I read it as one big collection, which I believe is how it comes nowadays. You want to read the whole thing altogether because it is something that should be read from beginning to end, or else I don't think you're really going to make sense of, my God, what would it be like if you only read one of the books? It would just be nonsense. You wouldn't get what's going on. Because it is critical that you know the beginning, troubles, and what happens in the end. I'm leaving out a lot, by the way, because I really enjoyed it, although I enjoyed reading it, but it was very frustrating because the character was so, just you're rooting for him. Please let go of these crazy ideas you have about behaving this way. It's just not worth it. I want to get to 55. So number 56 is The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett. It's nice suit, black and white, film noir. What are you, some kind of a wise guy? What do you know? I'll show you a wise guy. Who are you calling a wise guy? That kind of stuff. The main character, Sam Spade, who was made famous, I believe, by Humphrey Bogart, he's a private investigator and he has to go find something, and he meets characters who lie to him, they deceive him, they are trying to manipulate him, and he tries to get the thing, Maltese Falcon. What does that mean? It's a statue of a falcon from Malta. It's not made of chocolate. If that's what you're imagining for some reason. I always do. I don't know why. Maltese? Oh, because of Maltesers. Maltesers, goddamn. It's almost like we really want to destroy the teeth of the children, right? Yes, here you go. Maltesers. Yeah. Your dentist will love you. Is it good? It's good. It is good. It's a detective novel, and Dashiell Hammett worked as a private eye, and it was based on his own experiences. So that is fun to read, and I don't read private eye mysteries, so it is a pleasure for me to sort of dwell for a short time in another genre. It is literature. It's just a specific kind of literature that I don't have a lot of experience with, and if I do, I want to have the best experience. So yes, Dashiell Hammett, The Maltese Falcon, I enjoyed it. I wondered if society was really like that, like a lot of tough guy gunmen walking around with double-breasted suits and fedoras in the Los Angeles heat. Do they not have massive sweat stains just like pouring through their outer garments? Like, it's hot for me here in Canada. Like, California must, even though it was 100 years ago, it still must have been hot as hell to be wearing like a double-breasted suit and a shirt and a tie and a vest. Yeah, so read The Maltese Falcon, is worth it. All right, number 55, On the Road by Jack Kerouac. I should probably make a separate video for this, but I'm not going to. Maybe I will. You know what? I think I will. I think the video is long enough for today, and I think I'm going to do a book review of On the Road. Sorry if that was a big tease, but you can probably see on the little bar down there that the video is almost finished. So that's all for today. I had planned actually to make, to include On the Road on this list, but no, I think it really deserves its own video. Zuleika Dobson, Age of Innocence, Parade's End, The Maltese Falcon. God damn. Those are the books nobody would take to the desert island. I think Parade's End, because originally it was 4 novels, and it is quite a grand, epic story. However, the wife and the man's attitude makes it very frustrating to read, but where is the frustration coming from? It's not coming from the writing. The writing is brilliant. The frustration is coming from what the author is doing to me, to my emotions, which makes it a very successful bit of writing. That would be number 1. 2, I guess The Maltese Falcon, because it's fun. I think it's impossible to escape the image of Humphrey Bogart, the whole film noir thing, which is why I recommend people read the books rather than watch the films, because then your imagination is not poisoned with these Hollywood images which are inescapable forevermore. Like, I can never read this book without imagining Bogart as the lead man. Who can? Who can do that? Read the books and don't watch the films. Parade's End, Maltese Falcon, and then what's next? Age of Innocence or Zuleika Dobson? Zuleika Dobson. I read it a while ago, and I remember it was a bit far-fetched. But I would rather read that than read The Age of Innocence again, because I don't know, it's just something annoying to me about this proper behavior. America was beginning to come into its own on the world stage. It was still quite a pioneering nation that was beginning to gain force and momentum. And there were these extraordinarily wealthy families who were at the top of society and trying to comport themselves, but I don't know if it was always as proper as the way Edith Wharton paints it. Sorry it's taken me such a long time to get on with this list, but every time I look at the list and I think, God, it's been at least like 15 years since I've read that book, and I always feel a bit ashamed that I don't have more current information. But, you know, it's taken me 30 years to read. I think I'm up to 95% of the list, which is, I'm very proud of that I've read 95% of these titles. So if a lot of the times I seem like I'm sort of flailing for memory, it's because I certainly am. Thank you for watching. My name is Grant. This is Grant Loves Books. If you would like to support the channel with a little money, there's a link to my Patreon page below. Every week I'm writing a bit of a blog about what's happening in my life. Well, that's where I expose all of my dirty secrets, which will probably ensure that I'm never able to run for political office. And as well, you get to see the videos before anyone else does. Anyone who does support me on Patreon, I always make sure that I send them an email to thank them and to, so we have a bit of a personal connection. So if you're looking for that, to have a personal connection with the YouTube guy who talks about the boring books, here I am. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a wonderful day.